Data security settings in Service Point. We've seen in screens within Service Point, the screens have locks scattered about within them, and the locks have been either green and open or red and closed. And the locks tell you what your data security settings are. They tell you if the data that you have created is visible to other providers in Service Point. If the data that you're entering has next to it a green open lock, that means the data is visible to the other providers. They can see what you've entered. If next to the data that you're entering there is a red lock, it's closed, that means the data is invisible. The other providers in Service Point cannot see the data that you've entered. Here's a new lock. It's red with a yellow exclamation point in the center. That lock is called closed with exceptions. Closed because none of the other agencies can see the data you're specifying. Exceptions, except for a designated list of providers, and you as the caseworker specify which agencies' programs go into that list. Data default security. Back in the agency as a caseworker that created John Mike Doe, when I was creating this client, I didn't specify what these locks would be, whether these locks would be open or closed. They just appeared here that way. So this lock is open and this lock is closed, not by my doing, but instead by my agency's default security settings. So it's my agency that determined that this lock should be open and these locks should be closed. And these locks are applied to a data section. Let's take a review of sections. Here back in the client profile subtab, this is the entire section for the client profile. All these questions, answers belong to the client profile. And next to each section, you'll see the default security setting or the default lock. So the default security setting for the client profile is open. Every answer in this section inherits the security setting from the section header. The section header for the client profile is open, and so all of these answers are open. Likewise, for the standard assessment, the standard assessment heading has next to it the default security of open. So all of these questions which fall under the standard assessment inherited the open security. So for example, because the standard assessment is open, the gender question is open, and every agency can see that I specified that John Doe is a male. Same thing for the monthly income assessment section. All of these records are open, so its default is open. Same thing with non-cash benefits. Here we get to file attachments. Every record in here is closed. So the default for the file attachments is closed. Likewise, we hop over to assessments. Let's look at the disabilities assessment. It has closed next to the header, and so all of the records in here are closed, except for this one down here. I left a straggler out here from a previous demonstration. So the point being that these are defaults, and when I create a new record, they inherit the security of the section itself. So when I created chronic health condition record, it took on the default security, which is closed. Same thing with drug abuse. it initially had a closed record here, but these are defaults, and you most likely have in your user profile the ability specified to change the default. And so this caseworker has that ability to change the default, and so this caseworker changed the default from closed to closed with exceptions. We'll talk more about that later. All right. So this explanation says as much. Here's the section heading, default security, which is open, and all of the answers underneath inherit the same security. And it goes the same way for the other settings. It could have been closed, and then all of these questions would have been closed, or the default heading security could have been closed with exceptions, and all of these defaults would have been closed with exceptions. And because they're defaults, and if you have the ability as a caseworker to change them, which most of you do, you can change these, actually any of these locks at the header or any of these questions individually. You can change the security in any way. If it's open, you can change it to close, close with exception. If it's closed, you can change it to open, close with exceptions. If it's closed with exceptions, you can change it to closed or open. Last, let's talk about each individual piece of data. As I've alluded, you can change the security setting different than what the default is. Let's see this demonstrated. We'll go back to the profile, into the standard assessment, and for last residence. Oops. Click on the history bar next to last residence, and here's the history of all the answered questions. If for whatever reason nobody wants to, or John doesn't want anybody to know that he's ever lived in condemned housing, just change the security from open to closed. I'm just giving you an overview here. We'll cover the detail on how to do all this in a later video. So now you see I've changed this different to what the default assessment security is. Or more likely, let's look at disabilities. Here's drug abuse. Right now it's closed with exception. If I wanted to open it up to everybody, John wants the whole world to know that he has a drug abuse problem, click on the link and click here to open. The lock changes to green and it's open. Or if he doesn't want anybody to know about this except for you and any other caseworker in your program, okay, just close it and the record's closed. Or if he wants the Lake County Health Department to know, and just them outside of your agency to know that he has this problem, here is where you scroll through the list of exceptions to the closed rule, click on the Lake County Health Department, save and exit. And now it's changed to close with exceptions. If you want to see who those exceptions are, just click back on the lock, pop-up appears, and it shows you which agencies have the check mark to it. Okay, so again, this is just a high-level overview of what's possible with the different settings, and we'll cover in more detail what this looks like in different agencies and prove it from different agency perspectives in later videos.